Another formatting video for Module 2 from your textbook, and this time we're going to talk about merging cells, rotating text, adding borders, and dealing with cell alignment. So taking a look at the completed workbook they use in Module 2, let's talk about how they created some of the effects that we're seeing here. Most of the features we're dealing with right now, again, are going to be on the home ribbon, but now we're talking the alignment group. So we'll talk about wrapping text, merge, and center. Here's our indent buttons, rotating the text, and then there's aligning the text left, center, or right, and then up and down, so vertical alignment in the cell. So this is not a merged cell. All of this text, Bristol Bay, is sitting in cell A1. If I click in B1, you'll notice up here in the formula bar there's no text. Sometimes I want to center this text over the existing data, and what I can do is select all of those cells, and when you hit merge and center, it makes it one ginormous cell. So notice when I click up here, it's just one selection, and it also centered that text. If I want to turn that off, I just click the button again, and it'll put it back in cell A1. Now, of course, it always was cell A1. If you look up here in the name box, it's A1. There is no B1, C1, D1, E1 anymore. This has all become cell A1. So I'll merge and center. You can actually do two at once, but what you have to do is merge across. Okay, not merge and center, because you'll get an error message that says, uh-oh, I'm about to delete one of your values, because that's going to make this entire selection one cell, and so you're going to lose one of your values. But if you were to merge across, then it's going to merge each row separately, but notice it didn't center. So now I go to the center alignment buttons. So here's left align, center align, or right align. This is one cell and that's one cell, but I can select them both and we'll center. So that's the merge across feature. It kind of speeds things up a little bit. And then of course there's just merge cells, but it doesn't center. And then if you unmerge, or basically hit it again, it unmerges those values. One more example, if I wanted to center that text above all of the data, I would just select it and hit merge and center. Now another thing that you can do is if you look at this text, it looks like it's centered in the cell, but it's actually not. If I run up here to these alignment buttons, it says it's aligned left. This would be aligned right, and this would be centered. And notice each line, when it's centered, it's tucked in, where these are all lined up on the left edge. So how did they do that? So now I'm left aligned. Again, I'm selecting that cell. You have indent buttons. Decrease and increase the indent. So if I just hit the indent button once, it moves it over. If I hit it again, it moves it a second time. So that's indented, which is different than centering. So notice the centering. Again, each line of text is centered on that cell. So I'm going to make it left align and increase the indent 2 times. A lot of times where you'll see indenting is like right here. I have, if you will, kind of a column heading called gross sales, and underneath that I have 2 different items for my gross sales, cost of sales and operating expenses. So rather than centering that, so that's what centering would look like. Right, so these don't line up anymore. They're both centered, but they're not lined up. So I'm going to go left align. Rather than centering, I'll select both of those and just increase the indent. So it looks like a subsection underneath gross sales. In terms of vertical alignment, where that comes into play, I am going to wrap text on these. I don't know if I can make this work or not. I am grabbing all of these cells, and rather than having current year be all in one line, I want it to wrap text. So I hit wrap text. Actually, it didn't do it. So I'm going to shrink up column C just a little bit. I'll shrink up column D just a little bit. Now, of course, I wouldn't leave it like this because it's telling me I don't have enough width to show my numbers. But the point I want to make is sometimes when you wrap text and put things on, in 2 rows inside of a single row, I want these 2 values to be aligned vertically in the center. So I can grab, I'll do it to all of them. I'll grab this center button right here, middle align, and that moves these up to be centered vertically in a row that happens to be larger. So that's that's what these buttons are for. Sometimes you may want it at the very top of the cell, the very bottom of the cell, or the center of the cell when we're vertical alignment. These bottom three, as we've already played with, are horizontal alignment. And you can see the effect of wrapping text. It puts things on two rows. If it doesn't fit in a single cell, then it'll wrap it into two rows within the same cell. So if I turn that off, then it's going to, now I got to auto fit these columns again. There you go. That's what that looks like. Going back to these addresses, you can see that's a lot of text in a single cell. Notice it's got the text wrap. So if I were to turn that off, all of that text is streaming all the way across the entire cell. And so that's what wrap text is going to do for you. Is bring it down so it'll fit in a narrower column width. Another way that you can make text wrap, besides hitting that button, the wrap text button, is click on this cell. So when I type the word current year, if I were to hit enter, it just puts it in the cell. If you were to click between current and year and hit alt enter, that basically puts in a line feed within the cell, and now I can hit current enter and it'll put it on two rows, and it actually turns on the wrap text button. But the alt enter allows me to define where the text is going to get wrapped. I put in a hard line feed, so that's alt enter will allow you to put in a line feed and wrap the text that way. Finally, let's talk about merging cells one more time and then rotating the text. So how did this happen where they got Washington up and down like this in one great big cell? I will clear the format. So here we go. There's Washington, and now we have separate cells. You not only can merge horizontally, you can merge vertically. So I'm going to grab all of those cells and I'll hit merge and center. So there it is. Washington is centered in column A. Of course, it's kind of hard to tell because the column's so narrow, but there it is, Washington. We merge this to one big cell, centered, but you probably want to get it centered with the vertical alignment. So now it's centered horizontally and vertically. But wait, how do we rotate the text? So this button right here is the orientation. So you can go vertical text up that way. You can go rotate text down. Different ways you can format cell alignment like this. You can actually put it at a 45-degree angle if you want. And now I'll hit OK. It's probably going to, so that's what that looks like. They have it going, looks like Oregon's, the O's on the bottom. So let's fix this. I will go here. Is that the text down? No. Text up. Yes, so Washington that way. And by the way, I'm done messing around, so I want to get it to look like this one. What would I use? I select that, Format Painter. I can run up here, and there we go. Now I have them exactly the same. That's the beauty of the Format Painter. You just have to get one thing looking right, and then I can use the paintbrush to apply it to the rest of the cells. And the last thing we'll talk about is borders. So notice up here, these are light gray lines, and down here they're dark lines. So that's your first hint that you have borders, is they're dark like that. So these have been put in with borders. And of course you can see a border around the words items sold. As long as I'm talking about that, notice another thing around fill. Once in a while people will get fouled up because there's a white fill. Right? And so all of a sudden you're like, what happened to the borders right here? Why are there no borders in the middle of my spreadsheet? And if you ever see that, that's probably because somebody turned on fill and it happens to be a white one rather than no fill. No fill, you can see the grid lines in the background. Okay, but the grid lines are a real light gray, whereas a border will be a darker color. To put on borders is you select the cells that you want to have a border. I'm going to select this group of cells for this example, and I'm going to go to the border button right here. And notice you have bottom border, top, left, right. And what it is whatever border you choose is for your selection. So if you select a single cell, it'll put a bottom border on a single cell. If you've selected two columns worth of cells, and I moved it, puts a bottom border across those two columns. So remember, it's putting a border around your selection. If you were to look at this, it has borders through everything. So I made this selection, and right here is all borders, and so that would put borders through every bit of those of all of my selection. Now if I wanted to customize my borders in some way, so for instance, for whatever reason I want to take out this top border just right there, but I want to leave all the rest. So what I would do is select these cells. I can now run up here, and there's a More Borders button at the bottom of that whole list, and you'll see a diagram of all the borders that you have. And remember, it's all about the selection. So I'm about to remove the border at the top of this selection, so I can click right there and get rid of that border. Or as long as we're here, let's take a look at what else we got. I could make it a thicker border and put it in, and I can also change the color, which I should have done first. I'm going to make it a light purple. Notice it didn't change it, so now I got to make sure I have the thick border, the light purple. We'll select in here again, and I could also do this side, but again, it's only for my selection. So now when I hit OK, I'll have a bold or thick purple border right here and on the right side of that selection. So that's the #1 trick with borders, is to just realize you're putting borders around the things that you've selected. So to do what they've done, you would select this whole thing and then put in that inside border button, the all borders. And that pretty much covers the alignment group, plus we talked about the border button in this case. So that's it for this video.